Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. Today I'll be talking about products that were hot but now are not. I think there are three ways a hyped product can become irrelevant, and I'm going to go through all of them really quickly right now. I feel like every single hyped product will go through one of these three phases, and I'm going to be telling you them all. So the first way a product can become irrelevant is if the formula simply doesn't hold up to the newer and better formulas that are always being developed. Formulas from 5 years ago have nothing on the formulas from 2018 moving onward. Makeup is always changing, there's always going to be something better, and in some cases, older makeup just doesn't have the ability to keep up with the newer makeup in that department. Another way a product can become irrelevant is if other companies come up with a similar, if not better, version of the product for a lower price point. This happens more often than you might think, and there are some products in this video that I'm going to mention that have better alternatives for better prices. The third way that a product can become completely irrelevant is simply when trends change. Trends are always changing, right? So you might think that something is really hot right now, but when you think about it, there's some things that were really hot like a few years ago, but now they're completely boring, completely out of style. People are not excited about these items anymore. Thus, this item becomes irrelevant. So if you spend your money on this item and for any of the three reasons it becomes irrelevant, then you're basically spending your money on something that no longer holds the same value as it did at a different point in time. So I'm going to get into the products right now. I'm going to be talking about a lot of people's holy grails, and I apologize if you don't agree with me in this video, but I definitely think that these products are on the way out, and there are other better and sometimes cheaper alternatives that are available. So let's just get into it. The first product I want to mention is the Morphe 350. I actually have it right here. I bought this when it was like at the peak of its craziness. Well, maybe at the even like the beginning of the craziness. And as you can see, it is completely beaten up. The lid completely fell off, and I have had my fair use of this palette. This used to be like the big thing. People were hyping it up to a legendary extent. It was always going out of stock. Morphe was always trying to restock it, and people were going batshit crazy for this palette because coincidentally that is also the point in time where warm tones started to become a big thing. People were saying, oh yeah, we love warm tones, and people were really like clicking on videos that had warm tone makeup looks. And now I think that's not the case, and I know it's a little bit ironic for me to say this because I am wearing a warm tone makeup look right now, but I hardly ever see something like this on the internet anymore, and I definitely don't wear a look like this nearly as often as I used to, and that is simply because trends go out of style. People don't really like warm tones as much as they used to, and even if you do still love warm tones, I think that there are better options in this palette, because if you look at the mattes in this palette, and if you swatch the mattes, and if you like really just examine this palette, there are better options. Because personally, when I look at this palette, I just think, in my opinion, that these two rows are the only two rows that look vaguely interesting, and everything else is just a sea of like poo brown that you can get in any other palette. So this palette, it was once really hyped up, it was once really special. Now it's just not relevant at all. I mean, if you like this palette and if you like the colors that are in this palette, I would definitely suggest getting something like the Morphe 350 or even the Morphe 350M. I think that's a matte version of this palette, and in those palettes the shades are a lot more varied. You don't get a lot of very similar shades in those newer palettes. Also, another great option is the Dare to Create by Morphe. I feel like that is a great color story, and it's a lot more current than this palette right here, because honestly no one cares about this palette anymore. We barely see it online, and we really only see it when someone is decluttering their makeup collection. Next, I want to talk about the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Wiz. This was such a big product when it first came out years ago, and for good reason, because the pencil, it was very small, it mimicked natural brow hairs, and at the time people didn't really have a really good option for brow pencils that was as skinny as the Anastasia one and that had a good shade range. People were really just like going crazy for this product, and people were really interested in the Brow Wiz, and people were saying that it was a holy grail. But now, honestly, I mean, you can still buy it, but I would suggest not doing so, because I have tried the Brow Wiz and really it's nothing special if you look at the market today. So many other brands such as Benefit and even some drugstore brands have come out with some really good alternatives when it comes to brow pencils, and people tend to like those options a lot more than the Brow Wiz, and you really don't see the Brow Wiz mentioned nearly as much as it used to be mentioned before. I'm going to show you a dupe for the Brow Wiz that not only competes with the shade range and the formula of the product, but also happens to be at a much better price point. I'm talking about the LA Girl Shady Slim Brow Pencil. This is $5 at the drugstore, and it is, in my opinion, such a better deal because the Brow Wiz is $21, and let's face it, you're paying for a pencil that will be gone in 3 months at the very most, so you're basically paying a lot of money for a pencil that you will use up very quickly. Well, this is pretty much the same thing, and it's $5. Such a better deal. The shade range is pretty much identical, and the spoolie, in my opinion, is even better than the original Brow Wiz. This is such a good option if you're looking for an alternative to the Brow Wiz, if you like the Brow Wiz, but you're watching this and you're thinking, that is an expensive brow product. Try this out. It really is one of my favorite brow products, and I am quite picky. Moving on, I'm going to talk about the Too Faced Chocolate Bar Palette. Oh my lordy. When it first came out, people were going crazy over it. They were like, it smells like chocolate and it even tastes like chocolate. It was the coolest thing ever to have the chocolate bar. Everyone wanted it. It was so big that they ended up coming out with an entire chocolate themed line. It was that big, and it also inspired many copycats because the power of the chocolate bar was just so enormous. So now, honestly, if you actually look at the chocolate bar palette, I'm just going to put some pictures right here. It's really nothing special. You have shades in here that you have in nearly every single neutral palette that's on the market. And I do want to say I have never tried the palettes myself. I've never put them on my eyes. I have swatched them, and I have watched many videos that feature the palette either in tutorials or reviews. And people are saying that the palettes right now, they do not compete with the better formulas that are coming out, because there's so many better versions of eyeshadow that are coming out every single day, and those formulas are more developed and just better in general than formulas that came from several years ago. So not only do I think that the formula is out of date, the shades are out of date, but I also think that the hype is out of date, to be honest, because no one gets excited about the chocolate bar palettes anymore, and I don't think it's something that will be able to retain that luster that it had for very long, if at all. I'm also going to talk about the Too Faced Peach collection. Now, this is something that has managed to stay relevant for longer than the chocolate bar palettes. People are now more excited about the peach collection than they are with the chocolate bar palette, and it makes sense because the peach collection, it's peach scented, it's fun, it's newer at least than the chocolate bar collection. But honestly, like, if you look at the peach collection, it is the same thing as the chocolate bar collection. It's kind of like the Morphe 350 of Too Faced, because they have these warm tones when really warm tones are not nearly as big as they used to be, and even people who still like warm tones, they don't tend to go for the peach palette from Too Faced anymore. They tend to use something like the Urban Decay Naked Heat, which I think is a much better option if you're looking for an updated version of a warm tone palette. The peach collection has managed to still be able to sell because of the promotion it's getting, and also because of the new products that the collection is getting, but I do think that it's not going to be staying very popular for very much longer, because it's just a fad. It's going to be going away soon, and the products that are in this collection are also going to be overtaken by newer and better formulas. Next, I'm going to talk about something that I've already mentioned before many times. I'm talking about the Urban Decay Naked palettes. I'm specifically talking about the first, second, and third Naked palette. They were so popular back in the day, and people were really just, everyone had a palette, everyone was obsessed with it. I mean, I didn't have one, but everyone else did, and People were excited about it. People were saying that it was the best thing ever. People were saying that it was like the perfect palette. If you look at the shade range, it's very basic. It's very typical of nearly every single neutral palette you will see, but it is an older version of those neutral palettes. And you can definitely see if you look anywhere online, if you type in the names of these naked palettes and you look at what people are saying now, people are saying that the formulas of these naked palettes are not nearly as good as newer versions of palettes in general. So the formula is out of date, the shades are boring and not really exciting anymore. And also, if you look at the finishes of the colors in the naked palettes, they are almost all shimmers, and now people don't want that. Now people are more comfortable buying a palette that has all mattes instead of all shimmers. That just doesn't sell anymore, and if you do a look with it and you post it on YouTube or you post it on Instagram, no one is going to be interested because those palettes are so overplayed at this point that it's just done. But if you want a neutral palette, don't get these older palettes, just get the soft glam. It is a really good option in my opinion. I've seen so many good reviews. I don't think I've seen a negative one so far. You can definitely do your own research on these products that I mentioned that I haven't tried. I mean, I can't give you 100% recommendation, but I can say that I've seen a lot of good things. And you can take what I say and you can do your own research and you can make your own decision. Next, I want to talk about the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Matte Foundations. People are still buying them, but they definitely aren't being as talked about, and people are not purchasing them at the rate that they were when they first came on the scene a few years ago. And I do think that the number of people that are buying this foundation and are interested in this foundation is steadily decreasing. I, for one, decluttered those foundations from my collection. I definitely do not need those foundations, and there were a few reasons why I did so. Number one, because the formula is not as good as the formula from newer foundations. Formulas in foundations especially, they constantly appear to be changing, and people overall tend to not necessarily stick to the same foundation they were wearing a few years ago. I don't think those foundations formulas are as good as the newer formulas that have been coming out recently. I also think that the shade range is complete bogus. People are having less and less patience for shitty shade ranges, and that is such a good thing because we have been seeing so many problems with shade ranges for so many years now. And I feel like even though certain brands seem to be completely out of the loop when it comes to that, other brands are realizing that and are producing better foundations with better formulas and better shade ranges. So other brands that have shade ranges that are not as good are being left in the dust. People are not as interested in purchasing from those brands anymore because of their failures in that sense. So people are not as interested in those foundations because not only is the formula out of date, but the shade range is definitely not inclusive, and people are just sick of that. Another foundation that I think is also kind of going out of style is the Maybelline Fit Me foundation. For a long time, I raved about this foundation. I definitely did think that it was a good foundation, and I still stand by that judgment that I had with older videos. I do think that it's a good foundation. However, I definitely don't think that it is as good as the foundations that we have currently. I do want to say that the shade range in those foundations is a lot better than the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Matte foundations, but I still have to say that the formula is not going to stay relevant for very much longer because people are just used to having better formulas come out on the market, and unfortunately for the companies, older foundations are just becoming less and less relevant. So that is pretty much it for this video. This was a little bit different, and I also quite enjoyed making this one. I hope you enjoyed watching it as well. Thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. Definitely be sure to check out my channel down below. I post a lot of makeup videos, and I actually have a lot of other kind of lifestyle, travel videos, vlogs, photography videos. So if you are interested, be sure to check those out down below, and I'll be seeing you next time. Bye guys.